Right, so this is actually where I think, right, now that I've been reading a little bit about law and learning law, or not just a little bit, quite a lot, right, and I'm at a stage where I'm actually calling the government out on doing things wrong and correcting the government, also calling out Parliament on particular things that they've been doing with the rules in Parliament. And we can't really actually take the government to court for things that they're doing in Parliament, right? Let's get this clear, or else, and even or else the Ombudsman would be able to. But the Ombudsman, right, says they can't act against any MPs, members of Parliament, right? So if the Ombudsman can't act against them, how can Nigel Farage in a private legal suit? Because that's the whole basis behind it. Now, there is a rule, and the model for this is in the 1689 Claim of Right Act, where it says that you can't have protections for civil debt, right? Civil debt. Now, I think that's the basis where all these big corporate entities that Matt Kennard's been investigating, these super cases where apparently the government's done certain things and companies reckon that it's put them at a loss. But not when it's like any of these cases where like they've sued them for future profit, they haven't actually made that money yet, right? They haven't even made that money yet, so it's not even money that they've got, it's money that they predicted they could get. You can't prosecute people for money that you don't have, right? Particularly when it's the government who sets taxes and things like that, right? Because the government have got legal right to do that. Now, I truly think that Reform UK have actually lost the plot. They're actually gone cuckoo. Nigel Farage broke the law himself in talking pints, and apparently we only had 14 days to challenge it. But there's actually a process you can challenge it in government, the proper official way, by petition, and they're not actually letting us run those petitions or get signatures, right? And that's how you do it. That's actually how you actually do it, right? That is a legal action. That is a legal action. It is a court. It's actually a legal claim, right? And you collect many signatures on it, like you do with private bills, right? And you make the government debate it, right? Which is a judgment, like, for example, controverted elections, right? And the government aren't letting us collect the signatures on it in order to make them debate it, right? Which is what public petitions is for. And electronic petitions is just an easy way to share it online, right? So we're meant to be forcing the government to investigate, widespread election offences, not necessarily just one seat, and that's what Reform have done. But the government have actually refused, the e-petitions team and Jamie Stone are blocking us and refusing us to use observation of due process of law in the court. What jurisdiction it is, Parliament. They won't let us do it, but they're letting Nigel Farage bring a legal case in the High Court, which is not even Parliament, where he's not meant to be bringing it. Or else the Ombudsman would be able to, right? And this is the Secretary of State for Housing and Local Councils, etc., right? That he's bringing it against, but they're still an MP, right? They are an MP. So if Nigel Farage is in court, right, why can't the Ombudsman take them to court? That's what I want to know. Now, this is the thing, right? This is where I think they're wrong. Now, and this is just my opinion. Now, this is what the claimant is seeking. So this is like Reform UK, right? The claimant seeks interim relief. Well, the thing is, in court, usually in law, relief is normally money, right? If someone owes you some money, or if they've done damages and it's set you back by some money, you want relief, right? But he's not seeking money here. The claimant seeks interim relief in the form, so it's telling you what form it is, of an interim order prohibiting the defendant, that's the Secretary of State, from making any statutory orders which would change the date of the forthcoming elections. This relief is said to be justified because if such statutory orders were made, they would have the likely effect. Is this probabilities? Is this like the law of probabilities or reasonable doubt or what? The likely effect of discouraging candidates. It is like what balance of odds and probability is he put here? Whether he just put it's likely. Isn't that like beyond reasonable doubt or what? It's likely. Where are the odds of probability here? Likely effect of discouraging candidates from coming forward and or participating. Time. What's that? What word's that? S-T-Y-M-I-E. Stymie. The selection of candidates and undermine the conduct of local election campaigns. So discouraging candidates from coming forward. So is he trying to make out that it's like, but that isn't that a terrorism 2000 offence? To intervene in, right? To intervene in an electoral process or to disrupt an electoral process or to those are terrorism acts. If you're a group or body acting to discourage from the electoral process, right, then effectively, right, that's terrorism 2000 act, right, because you're using a threat of action, an action or threat of action, right, to discourage electoral processes. So that's terrorism act 2000 offence, and that's new, right? That's brand new law since the year 2000, which is brand new. But that's criminal. It's criminal, though, that, right? But this is what he's saying. He's actually saying the words in this claim that are effectively the same as discouraging people from an electoral process, right? Now, you can't get the government done. Apparently you can't prosecute the government criminally, right? But you can only claim civilly, right, for monies, right? Now, this is actually quite complicated and technical, right? And I'm going to explain it to you now, right? Look, Reform UK, right? This is the thing. Reform UK is a political party. It's not a business company. It's not a corporate business company, etc., right? So they're not for profit. They don't exist for a financial profit, right? Reform UK cannot make money. They cannot make a profit from what they do, right? All the money they get and donations are to cover costs, right? But it's not for profit. So then when it's like you can't have protections for civil debt, right? He's talking about like for profit or loss, like, but for private parties, right? For loss for private parties. Now, Reform UK don't have any financial loss or gain, right? Because they're not for profit. Now, this is the thing though, right? So they can never actually have a personal gain or loss, right? Because it's not meant to be, it doesn't exist for personal gain or loss, right? It exists for a political purpose. Now, that means that you can't really have civil claims for personal gain or loss, right? That's civil debt. That's what makes it civil debt, right? Now, what Farage is trying to make out, therefore, is that there will be a political loss or gain, right? Or an obstruction to his candidates, right? Now, he can't use that clause for civil loss or gain because civil is for the personal private profit part of it, right? And the gain of the seats or loss of the seats, etc., is not personal. It's actually political. Now, Parliament are meant to be the judge of that, and you may judge it in the Court of Parliament. This is the thing, right? Now, But what the government are actually, the actual actions of the government, therefore politically, right, wherein they're deciding what the rules are going to be or whether something's going to occur or not occur, is purely political. It's not civil. It isn't actually civil, right? Because it's not like a civil debt. Because it would have to be that's like, if someone breaks your shop window or something like that, right, and you have to pay money for it, right, which is all covered by insurance. What Farage is trying to do is trying to make out that it's personal, private loss or gain, when it actually isn't, because his party's not running for a private loss or gain, but he wants the gain for himself, but it's actually not. It's not his. It's a party, right? Which you form the political party for members and for public, right? Well, for not in their public capacity, but in their voting capacity, right? Now, this is the problem with this, right? The government, we're meant to do this. We're not meant to do this in this civil court. And Nigel Farage himself, this is meant to be done this is meant to be done, right, through a petition to Parliament with a proper hearing with MPs voting on it. But they're not letting us do that. And a massive number of weight of signatures to do it, which is the same as call a general election. Now, they've let us run the petition for call a general election, right? And the committee had a debate about it. Now, let's say that they let us run this petition. Let's say this claim that Farage has got here was written out in an e-petition, and they let us run it a little bit like very similar to Michael Westwood's petition, right? Let's say that Nigel Farage or anyone in Reform managed to get an e-petition running about this here, right? About this matter here, okay? And let's say that he got 3 million signatures about calling off the elections. That's where and how it's meant to be heard. And it's not just like these e-petitions committee debates, just at the end of it, they say, we all vote and say that we have debated this subject, all say aye, right? But that's the scam. This is actually the actual scam itself. When you gain 3 million signatures for something, right, the Parliament are meant to be voting on it in the main chamber in Parliament, right? It's meant to go to a debate in the House of Parliament. Now, it's actually a matter of urgent. This is, right? I'll tell you what this actually is. This itself is a matter of urgent public concern. That's what the case just is. It's a matter of urgent public concern that the elections are called off. Now, you're meant to have a minimum of 10 and a max between 10 and 40 MPs are meant to stand up and arise when Nigel Farage comes into the chamber, and they're meant to be able to bypass the Speaker of Parliament, right, and get a vote on it. But it is the judicial hearing and solution of it, because it's not about Farage's own personal private money, but he's trying to make it personal. He's trying to bend the facts and truth and the law, right? And he's trying to make it personal, like he's at a loss. But he's also trying to make out, though it's the voters are at a loss, but the voters are our financial loss, because elections ought to be free, right? Elections ought to be free. So, but they're paying for the tax money, but it's a governmental process, right? I mean, at least if Farage were trying to make out, that the government, that we're paying, well, if they didn't hold the election, it won't cost anything, right? So if they're if the Secretary of State and Starmer and Labour are calling the elections off or not having them, we wouldn't pay for them, right? We would not be paying for them. Do you understand that? So we won't be at a financial loss from the election, right? So it's a political loss. But ironically, right, if you are being you can't be at a financial loss when you don't actually end up having to pay for the election because they don't have it right. And reform aren't meant to be for personal or private profit, right? They're a non-profit. So there's no loss or gain or money involved, because if they call the elections off, reform don't actually spend any money on the election and don't have an election campaign because there isn't one, right? So they're not a financial loss, right? Now, if they want the election to happen and it's to do with the government, they're meant to have that debate and there's a way of getting it. But let me tell you now, this is exactly what's happening with these call a general election petitions, right? I tell you what, since 2010, since they created this new petitions committee, and no standing orders of Parliament have changed. They've conjured it up, poofed it up out of the ether. It's basically a committee, right? And it's all run on a policy signed by the leader of the House, right? And the chair of that committee. Now, how can just the leader of the House, not even the Prime Minister and not even the Speaker, and the chair of a committee completely change the order of proceedings of a judicial nature in Parliament, right? They can't, because anything that goes through Parliament has to be voted by the whole House. That's the point. Now, I've actually pointed this out now when it comes to, look, right, this is when you're meant to use that emergency debate rule, and Farage isn't using it, and I don't know why, because he's got like I don't know, I think there are like a handful of Reform MPs currently. There's Sarah Purchin, there's Nigel Farage, Tice, Lee Anderson, that's 4. I don't know if they've got 10, but a lot of them got booted out or left, like, Rupert Lowe, right? So but you would have thought if Starmer's calling the general election off, right, then you would have thought that, the Green Party would have been bothered about it, or the Lib Dems. So why aren't they rising with Nigel Farage in the chamber? Why aren't they rising to bypass the Speaker and having a debate on it? Are they... But they haven't even gone for the vote. Now, if they're saying, well, we might lose because, Labour are going to vote in favour of, what Labour want to do, I don't think that's necessarily the case, because I think some of the Labour Party people will think it's fair to have elections, but they haven't even had the vote. They haven't even put it to the vote. And it doesn't matter whether Nigel Farage thinks it'll lose or win the vote, right, if he can get enough 40 MPs to rise. They're not even voting on it. Because do you know why? I don't think they want people to know that you can have that process, and I don't think they want people to know that we can use it and that they've been jipping us off and scamming us with the current e-petitions thing. And I've actually written to more than 40 MPs now about this and shown how a certain number of signatures from each electoral area can make their MP actually stand up and rise on the matter, and when it's the same matter. And that's the proper way to do it. This is not even meant to be in the court, because think about it. If Farage can do this, right, then the Ombudsman can do it, because the only basis of the Ombudsman is that he's parliamentary privileged only to Parliament, and you can't do it in the courts, right, because the Ombudsman can't take legal action. What Farage is doing is defying the rules of law, right? Just like the Ombudsman. And it's absolute, complete and utter tosh. And Farage isn't even on this planet. Farage is living in a world of make-believe and fantasy that does not exist, right? And cannot exist. And whatever professors or doctorate in law he's got helping him, right, they all need suing. And the fact that this court is even going along with this, right, and accepting the case, Noel Wilcox went into court, and he'd already been to a county court and got an order, right? And he went into the High Court about this illegal London road signage, and they threw it out. They wouldn't hear it. So he's having to get Bromley Council to back him up. So they're trying to prevent him from bringing this case, right? But yet here in the High Court, they're accepting Nigel Farage and entertaining him when he's completely and utterly wrong. And it's this Justice Chamberlain, right? How is this Justice Chamberlain even taking this seriously? And this is the same principle what's going on with the prosecutions against us when people who are using the jurisdiction of Parliament are getting prosecuted in the criminal courts when they need petition of leave of court to even mention it, right? Farage cannot get financial relief because he's not meant to be for profit, and if the government don't hold the elections, the public aren't at a financial loss. And that is why, look, in the 1688 Bill of Rights, it's illegal prosecutions by the King's Bench for matters or causes decidable by Parliament and not in any other places. And this is what they're actually doing. They're trying to get it heard in the courts. And it's all because of Gordon Brown mashing it up, right, with this Supreme Court thing, which has led people to believe that they can go to the courts, right, when actually they can't. And that's only for appealite. It's only for an existing case that started in the courts lower down, appealite jurisdiction to the House of Lords. This started in Parliament, this matter. The matter that Nigel Farage is bringing started in Parliament. Now, 2010, right, is when this ridiculous obstruction was inserted, which bypasses the normal way of presenting petitions in Parliament by paper, how you can obtain a judicial remedy using the Parliament as a court, usage of Parliament as a court, right? And Farage, there's something wrong with him. He's thick. He's actually thick, proper thick, to know how to actually do it and get a certain number of 40 MPs to rise up and get a judgment on it. And if he doesn't like what they vote on, why does he want to be an MP? Because this is like his social media thing, right? Farage wants the world to know his opinion and wants to influence the world, right, on the opinions of himself and reform, right? And he's going on every news programme under the sun, right? But he wanted to stand and be an MP because he wanted a place in the Court of Parliament, and he wanted to be able to vote in Parliament. And if he can't get his way in Parliament, or if he's not intelligent enough, if he's too thick to get what he wants in Parliament, now he's going to the courts, right? But if he wanted to, why didn't he get a job as a judge? I think Nigel Farage is in the wrong job. Nigel Farage should have gone to judicial college, right? And if he wanted to make decisions about what the government can and can't do, and if he thinks that the courts are the place to do it, why didn't he get a job as a justice? Justice Farage. Why didn't he get a job as a judge? And then he could send Tyson to bring cases before him and make a judgment the way that he wants. Just like bloody the Aidan Eadley's doing now. He's playing both sides. He's been a judge and then he's been a lawyer at the same time. You know, it's like a doppelganger. It might as well be Aidan Eadley the barrister and Aidan Eadley the judge. Oh, hello, Aidan. Hello, Aidan. It's Aidan and Aidan. You know, it's like Aidan Eadley's bringing a case into Aidan Eadley himself. It's like Nigel Farage comes in, brings a case in. Oh, hello, Nigel, there you are. Like he's the judge. You know, he's meant to be a judge in Parliament when he votes with his party, right? Now, what they're trying to make out they're trying to make out here that democratically, you can't have a private loss or profit from this, because if they don't have the election, they won't charge the taxpayer, right, for the election financially, right? It won't come out of the taxpayer money. And the political party's not for a private loss or gain, and if they don't have election, then Reform won't put any money into it, right? You've got to understand this, right? Farage is trying to make out that the loss is in the form of the vote, right? And the vote's not financial loss or gain. The vote is purely a political loss or gain, which is under the jurisdiction of Parliament. The courts cannot give a political loss or gain judgment. They're not entitled to. This is the whole point why the courts can't hear Extinction Rebellion cases, etc., right? I don't know why Justin Chamberlain's accepted this, because when Noel Wilcox put his case to the court, when he'd already got a county court order, which was a matter the courts could hear, they wouldn't hear it. They refused to hear it, right? They decided that they're not going to hear it. Now, this is actually that, because so it's talking about candidates, right? And then also would be discouraging candidates from coming forward, right? So what Farage is actually saying in words here, right, or what they're actually saying in this court, this is a court-issued document, so this is actually an order and statement from a court, right, concerning this case. What I've highlighted in blue there, what they're actually saying here, in no uncertain terms, is they're saying that is discouraging candidates from coming forward. It doesn't matter whether it's candidates or voters, right? So that is like misconduct against petitioners. Misconduct against petitioners is deterring, or it's like deterring or discouraging petitioners or other business before Parliament. Well, voting is business before Parliament in order to Parliament, right? Now, the courts are allowed to hear only specifically, right, election petitions, which is the results of an election when it goes ahead. There's nothing in law which has given the court the power to hear whether the government can or can't have the election, because they had to make a special act and they had to make special legislation in order for the justices to be able to hear the election petition of a controverted election that occurred. It had to be created in law. Can you understand that? They had to make it in law so it was possible for the justices to be able to allow to hear a matter of an election that took place. So here, they're wanting the court to hear a matter about an election that hasn't taken place. So how can it be possible? The existence of an election petition proves that a special process had to be created for the courts to hear it. You know something, right? I just don't know what planet that Nigel Farage and Reform are on. They're not in the real world. They're not in the real world. They're not on planet Earth. They're living in a land of fantasy and make-believe, and any professional barrister or lawyer or election expert, right, who claims that they're giving professional advice to Reform is wrong. They're in error, they're wrong, and they're giving incorrect, erroneous legal advice. And the very fact that Justice Chamberlain even took this on, accepted it, is a criminal, right? In light of them hearing all these cases against us, which they're not allowed to hear, like, because that's the same matters and causes to Parliament, right? It's matters and business in order to Parliament, right? Now, elections are business to Parliament. They are parliamentary process, but a special one which has been provided for in its own exceptionally special legislation, like the Representation of the People Acts, right? The Representation of the People Acts and so forth, right? Now, maybe there might be a special clause in those Representation of the People Acts. I don't know, but I don't think they're calling it out here. And this is the thing, right? This is really important. Since the year 2000, which is quite modern in terms of, like, law and history, since the year 2000, the exact descriptive, the exact intellectual definition, the exact descriptive of what is highlighted in blue here has actually been accounted for already in law under the Terrorism Act 2000. It's saying that if you interfere with, obstruct or deter from electoral processes, it's a crime. So you can actually be treated criminally, right? But they're trying to make out that this is some sort of personal financial loss, but there isn't. There isn't a civil debt here. There is no civil debt here. But you can't use protections for... If there was a civil debt, right, if Nigel Farage himself had financially lost from this, he could do this, right? If one of his candidates had lost financially from this, he could do it, right? Or if even the voters had financially lost from it. But if they don't have the election, then we don't pay for it, right? So it's... Now, can you proscribe the government? This is like the question, can you proscribe the police, right? Can the police be proscribed as a terrorist group? Because it doesn't say in the 2000 Act that you're protected by legal privilege, right? But the later acts, the 2006 and 2008 terrorist acts, say that you can have legal privilege. So this is like a question around, can the government itself either be prescribed, but obviously they probably can't under parliamentary privilege, therefore you can't really bring this because you can't accuse them of disrupting political processes. Now, if you can't prosecute them criminally for disrupting political processes because they're the ones who have got the right to decide what the political processes are and aren't, then you certainly can't claim a civil debt from it. And I really think that this is, I mean, this is meant to be heard in Parliament. There's actually a way to, it's actually not difficult. And I'm actually just experimenting with this now. It would help me if I could get in contact with people from different areas, constituencies. But this is the thing, right? Look, the petition, right, sometimes gets published in the newspaper, and the parties who are doing it, when you're doing a private bill, right, you've got to put it in the newspaper. When you're doing a private bill, right, to Parliament, you've got to publish it in the newspaper to make the public aware of it. And then they know who the petitioner is, and then they know that they can submit a petition to oppose it, right? A petition against it, and people can sign it. That's why you're meant to know about it. Now, when Michael Westwood's got his petition, we all know who Michael Westwood is because they told us his name, right? We can find his contact details, but they don't give us his contact details. When you're doing a private bill in the newspaper, I think they've got to put the contact address as well. Now, you can Google Michael Westwood's contact address. I've written to him. He never replied to me, but I had to go and find it myself. It wasn't published as is the official contact address for the matter, right? You know, if it was a private bill, there could be certain obligations for responses and so forth, but you write to you communicate to Parliament over it as well, right? Now, look, when it's a legal case, like private bills, look, when Parliament are going to do something that asks people for evidence, Big Brother Watch have just asked people to submit written evidence, right? Written evidence for, you know, child digital ID and things like that. They've asked to submit written evidence. So they're giving you an opportunity to give evidence to the Parliament in this case, right? Now, look, that's how it's going to be like really for the Michael Westwood petition, because someone might have wanted to give evidence for that, but the way that they do e-petitions, all you can do is sign it and add your name to it, but you might have more to give than just your name. You might actually, you know, have evidence to give, but unless a committee takes it on and calls for evidence, you can't submit it otherwise, right? But there's one thing. If you're meant to be able to get in contact really with the petitioner and other people who've signed it with you, because you're a legal body, like similar to the COP10 form, right, in court protection. You've joined a body, and the body, when the bodies, even like to call a general election petition, right, with Michael Westwood, they've signed a legal action, right? They've signed and joined a legal action, right? Now, it's true that, people can talk about it in social media just like they can talk about it in the street, did you hear about that Michael Westwood petition, right? But where's the official contact? When you put a private bill, because you've got petitions for public petitions and petitions for private bills, right? They're meant to be the same, but slightly different rules. But from 2010, with this ridiculous, insane electronic petitions thing, right? How do you contact your fellow litigants? Look, right, when they used to have petitions, it had to have certain information printed on every sheet, right? The petitioner is the first top sheet, right? This is the petition of Michael Westwood of blah, 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 West Midlands, right? Black Country, whatever. And he had to have his name and address on the top sheet of the petition, right? And then every subsequent sheet with the names of the petitioners on has got to actually have the certain information from the main top sheet, right? When you sign it, and everyone who's signed. When you sign it, you can see other people who are signing it. When you sign it, you know who started it and how to contact them. Because particularly if you're giving money to the cause, if you're donating money, people want to deliberate what they want to do. If there's 3 million people signed it, they might want to make decisions. This is why they have public meetings in the town hall for petitions. They're bringing a legal action. They might be donating to it. It's not for profit, but they all might want to have a meeting to say, oh, okay, Parliament didn't debate our case. What is our next course of action, right? With the funds, with the money. Has anyone got any ideas? Does anyone want to speak or make a proposal? Let's all vote on it. You see, Nigel Farage, right, is thick as mince. I'm telling you, right, he is thick as mince. He's mince thick. His IQ he's not intelligent. He's just got balls, pure yellow Dutch courage balls, right? What Farage needs to do is get all of his Reform UK people to sign paper petitions to each of his constituents and ask them to petition their MP, some of them who aren't Labour, or are Labour, whoever it is. He's got Reform people in every constituency in England. All they need to do is sign paper petition to their MP to rise on the matter, okay, of this Secretary of State issue for the local elections. And 40 MPs, because it is an emergency. It is an emergency or matter of national importance. That's what it is. And then 40 members actually receive the petition on the same day at the same time, and then they all have to hand it. When they all hand it in, they're all rising to the same matter when they read it out. That's what they're actually doing. There's 40 MPs saying, oh, well, we want something done about this. Election's being called off. It bypasses the Speaker and it gets a proper vote on it. But now, Farage, and if they lose the vote, you look like in the court if he loses this case, right? And that's justice. That's what justice is in this country politically. But he's not even doing that. I don't think they want people to see and hear in the newspapers that you can achieve that by these paper petitions and with only 40 MPs, because people would use it for other things, right? You're not going to be going into the court for this. And I really don't know why. I don't know what the hell Justice Chamberlain, what the fuck Justice Chamberlain is doing, right? Because some of these justices have been turning down things like what Noel Wilcox have got, right? And things like that. Relief and direct. What you see, the word relief cannot be politically. It cannot be in the value of a political loss or gain. It can only be monetarily, right, and private, because this is the people of the country. You see, they're trying to make out that it's reform. Reform aren't actually the claimant, because it's actually the people who vote. It's the people's decision, right? And the process is up to the government. And the government have made a special process for challenging the results of a petition. And that was only possible because they made law for it, right? And they haven't made law to challenge whether or not... See, they would have to make law for challenging whether an election could be on or not. Now, if I'm wrong about this, and if they've got a special clause in the Representation of the People Act, I'd be quite surprised. But what they're trying to make out is that, you see, putting someone at a loss or gain is what the Terrorism Act prevents, but you can't supposedly bring the Terrorism Act when there's a legal privilege, because this is a thing, the government have got the legal privilege to decide whether or not an election goes on, apparently, or not, right? And if Farage is trying to make out, he's not saying that they don't. Farage's case is not claiming that the government don't have the power or authority or right to call the election off. He's just making out and claiming that it affects the candidates. But actually, the candidate, you see, this is the selfishness of this as well. Always about the candidates. We want reform people in government. We want reform people in government. It's the voters' loss of the vote. But they're not a financial loss, because if the government don't have the election, we won't pay for it. And the candidates won't be a financial loss because they won't have to do their election campaign, right? There is no financial loss here, let alone private, not even for the party, right? It's purely political seats in Parliament that they want. And this is why Starmer's wanting to put more peers in the House of Lords, right? Farage, I don't know who the fuck on planet Earth is advising Farage on this, like with that stupid Sarah Poaching election petition, right? Well, I know who's advising Farage. They've got this doctor-in-law guy. I've rung him up and left an answering machine message. That guy, right, is a fruitcake. And we've got professors in law at the moment and doctors in law who have failed to call out the government and courts on the illegal prosecutions. And what about bypassing the standing orders of Parliament in this stupid new policy-only e-petitions process, right? That is completely and totally bypassing standing orders of Parliament. And apparently they don't even have to go by standing orders. They can go by established tradition. But what is established tradition? Well, it's actually the full history record. They've re-established the tradition in 2010, and they're attempting to rewrite and re-establish the tradition and erase everything from memory from pre-2010. So they're saying that what tradition is from 2010 to now. That is the whole tradition of Parliament, right? Which is absolute bollocks, right? It's complete and utter tosh. This is like... And Jamie Stone's getting involved in this. This is like, you know, who are these people? They get elected into Parliament, right? And the next thing they're trying to make out, oh, this is the traditional established practice of Parliament. Bollocks! These people aren't qualified to be in government. They're not qualified or responsible enough to be in government. They're not intelligent enough to. They're running on pure bluff, right? They're running on their bluff and the blag, and the press are that thick to believe them and go along with it, right? So here, this is the decision challenged is described on the claim form as a proposal made on the 18th of December 2025 to postpone or cancel an unspecified number of local council elections that are statutorily due to occur on the 7th of May and any such orders as he may be made by the defendant purporting. So they're saying it may be made by the defendant, but the relief they're getting is about candidates, but a candidate's not suffering they're not suffering a civil debt or loss, because it's not personal to them as citizens, because the political party is not for profit. Maybe so, and they're actually agreeing that the orders they could look, and any such orders as may be made by the defendant, but he says may be made. So if they may be made, that he can make them. So Farage isn't challenging whether he could or could not make the orders or not. Farage, right, is trying to make out that this is all about his candidates, right? Oh, I want my candidates to be able to stand. I want my candidates to be able to be in government, right? This is a parliamentary, because they may make it, that means that the courts may not decide it. It's not any matter of civil debt or financial loss or gain at all whatsoever. It's a political seat gain. It's about gaining seats in Parliament. And they had to make special law to create election petitions, and justices are only allowed to hear the outcome of those. I am furious with Nigel Farage. I'm so furious with him. I cannot express how mentally and intellectually retarded the guy is. Who is advising him on it? And why has this Justice Chamberlain in the High Court accepted and entertained this? Just because he's an MP, just because of that guy who advising him, why has the High Court rejected Noel Wilcox's claim over the illegal road signage in London and Mayor Sadiq Khan when a county court heard it from a tribunal and said that it was right, and he wants to get backed up by the High Court? Why have they thrown that out? Why do they not? Why is the court pretending that they can hear this? This Justice Chamberlain. Why is this Justice Chamberlain? He can't hear this. It needs to be a complaint against the Judicial Conduct Investigation Office now, that this Justice Chamberlain should not have accepted and took on this case. They couldn't accept it and take it on, right? And I know exactly who this person is who's advising Nigel Farage. He's wrong. I've already rang him up about other matters that he's wrong about. Why is he backing and supporting Nigel Farage and Reform UK and working for them when Farage cheated in the 2024 general election? When he ran, he used GB News and a programme called Talking Pints to boost his popularity, which affected the outcome of his election and popularity, which was illegal, right? And no one challenged it within the 14 days. You can challenge it to Parliament by a controverted election petition over generally reform, cheating, multiple candidates in multiple elections. Parliament won't let us run that petition. They're blocking us and obstructing us. What this case is a matter of national urgent importance of something that Parliament may make that decision, and the fact that they make the decision proves that it's only what Parliament, right? This is the thing. The court may not make that decision because it's not in their jurisdiction to. This is the Bill of Rights. Illegal prosecutions by the King's Bench for matters decidable, cognisable only in Parliament, right? But they're trying to make out it's a civil matter over debt, which they can hear because it's in a civil court, but it's not. It's actually not, and they're lying about it. They haven't. They're really fucking stupid, these people, and I'm having to swear now. Right? I'm furious about how Nigel Farage is managing to con and deceive the nation, and then. But how easy it is to do that when you're backed up by the press, when you're like this celebrity person and you're on all the news programmes and you're running on pure absolute balls, Dutch courage, pure yellow belly, and you're managing to pull it off. And all your friends and pals who work on the news and the newspaper reporters and the Sun and the Daily Mirror and the Trinity Press, and they're all going along with it. How easy it is to mislead a nation from a fool. And that lawyer that he's using, fools.